Hi, and welcome to Ward 13. We're going to have a discussion about Donald John Trump, our favorite president. Does he still saying he's President T, Jeff Kassell?
Does he call himself T? I don't know. I haven't...
He did for a while. We have an empty seat next to you. That's going to be... does he have an honorific title, Jim O'Connell?
I don't know.
I call it... We were using on Matt's show, I had a character, the Reverend Jim O'Connell, but I could never quite get the accent right.
Yeah.
More like West Virginia.
Yeah, he cultivates that Irish accent.
Well, being Irish, he has every right to. No, it became the Reverend Jim Shannon or something. I realized that was a Tennessee Williams character from The Night of the Iguana. That was a great movie with one of Richard Burton's best roles. Do you remember that?
Well, I do remember it, and Tennessee Williams is people don't realize what a great writer he was.
And still is.
And they made movies out of at least half of his plays.
Well, they made the first one, of course. No, before they made Streetcar Named Desire, which is a great film, Elia Kazan, Brando, but Vivian Leigh instead of, who was the original Blanche Dubois?
I don't remember.
Oh, man, she won an Oscar much later.
I remember when
Driving Miss Daisy.
I remember when Anne Margaret did it. Wasn't she Blanche?
Oh, she was good, but that was Tommy Lee Jones, wasn't it? Was he Stanley?
I just remember her, you know. But the thing about...
They made a movie of The Glass Menagerie, which is a great play, which was a flop, with Kirk Douglas, of all people, was in it. Not exactly a persona.
He was a short story writer, too.
Oh, yeah.
People underrate him. He lived a pretty chaotic life.
Then his other great success, that won the Pulitzer Prize in 1947.
Cat on a Hot Tin Roof?
No, Streetcar Named Desire. Cat on a Hot Tin Roof was 1955, but Elia Kazan, they fell out after that. Although he did direct one more play, because people were saying that Kazan was a co-author with him, which Kazan said wasn't true. Kazan was considered the great Broadway director of his time, if not of the second half of the 20th century. And
he wrote 4 novels. I read them all. They were pretty good. I'm talking about Elia Kazan.
Oh yeah, like the arrangement's the only one that was interesting.
Yeah, they did make. I think he directed a movie.
Oh, it was terrible.
Was it?
He couldn't get Brando. And so he had Kirk Douglas in it.
I think Brando, by the time that movie came out, was about 500 pounds.
No, he wasn't. It was 1969. They shot it in 1968.
Did they?
He refused to. He said he didn't want to be in it because of Martin Luther King Jr. had just been shot. Yeah. We're talking about Elia Kazan and Tennessee Williams.
Oh, okay.
On our way to the subject of our favorite president, President T. Yeah, I don't think he's using that anymore.
I saw him on TV today.
You did? I saw a snippet.
Oh, yeah.
It
was a fabulous performance.
Was it? Yeah. This is in the White House, in the Oval Office?
Yeah, it was like a little mini reality show. Went on for about 20 or 25 minutes.
That's how long it was?
Did it really?
Yeah, and it was pretty forgettable.
Yeah, really? Well,
yeah,
that's good.
He's trying to create some drama. He's he said that he will take the blame for shutting the government down. The American people
want the wall.
Deserve the wall.
Yeah.
But what I couldn't figure out is why he's got to negotiate with Congress for the wall.
Yeah.
Because he told us, if he told us once, he told us 500 times, Mexico was going to pay for the wall.
But of course, they never were, and we knew it at the time. And
Jim, don't get too far away.
Okay.
You're going to go out of camera.
No, I'm trying to get. Okay. So
you're trying to get away from Dr. Jeff Kassell?
No, not at all.
Do you want to come over here, Dr. Jeff Kassell?
I think it's too late for that.
It's never too late for anything on John Hopwood
we'll
show.
Drive
I love anarchy.
No, it's funny, right? In any other world, but in this Alice Through the Looking Glass world, his supporters don't care. I think they might even have some.
Now, why do you think his supporters don't care?
Because
I don't know.
The
ultimate answer to that, I don't.
Because I do know why his supporters don't care.
Okay.
Jeff Kassell, look at me as the host and tell me, why do they not care? Just a little, spice in the different angles.
Because
not like last week.
They suffer from Trump love, and love is blind.
Well, he is.
That's it in a nutshell. They have fallen in love with this character, and he's like a relative, a close relative.
Isn't he?
And which is why he could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue. And he would not lose one vote.
And we thought he was like indulging in hyperbole when he said that. And it turns out he's actually correct.
No.
Or close to it.
He's right. He wouldn't lose any votes, but he would end up in jail
He would,
because.
which is
Would
what he
he?
might end up anyway.
Well, there's this.
What jury would convict him?
Well, it might be tough to
Depending
get
on-
a.
depending
It might
on
be
where
tough
they
to get an
get them.
impartial jury.
Yeah.
But normally, if you shoot somebody, and you do it in the open, and there are witnesses, that's kind of a lock.
Oh,
I got to tell you, for most of the certainly recent history of the United States, right, since World War II, you would have been tried for treason, for colluding
you
with.
wouldn't.
Let me-
Come on.
You would have been tried for treason
Show me
if, and that's it. We don't know yet. If you were convicted of colluding.
What about
with
Carl
Russia.
Albert? Do you remember him?
So we have people.
What about
you
Tip
think
O'Neill?
if you think about people, how this has changed. You know that just the mere smell of it, would have been huge in the past, and today we're like the frog in the water.
Now,
The water gets
Jim,
warmer and warmer,
you-
and still
Do you ever hear
people don't care.
BCCI?
Sorry,
BCCI? Yeah.
Yeah, no.
You've never heard of the BCCI, the bank that was involved in Irangate?
Oh yes, I have. I remember.
Do you know?
Rangate, yeah.
Do you remember that Burt Lance had to resign in the Jimmy Carter? He was his off budget manager. You know, that was the people that touched him, and it's there. And you can go. I don't know if you can find anything online, but the idea
We're getting into the weeds.
No,
here.
but the point is that you're saying about treason. We always like to get into the weeds. We're in Alice in Wonderland. We're under a giant toadstool. That's the only thing that's keeping us from being micturated on. But you're talking about that. But that's not Carl Albert. They had the Korean CIA bribed the people around him. If not, he was the Speaker of the House, and Nixon was going to cut the troops in Korea. And then Tip O'Neill had his.
Can I interject a minute? Just a minute.
But the thing with Burt Lance was that was Saudi money.
All right, so I dislike, with all respect, I dislike the comparative sort of, they all do ill kind of thing. This was the Trump. This was the Trump comment when asked about Mr. Putin and being charged with Mr. Putin, and he said,
you're telling me
he said about his own country, right, that well, we do lots of bad things too. Now, if you want to go through history, of course, bad things were done by the United States. You can't claim they weren't.
You're talking about treason over economic relations, and
I'm not.
You're talking like other countries don't influence American elections.
Well, so let me be clear. Let me be clear about what I am saying.
I remember Watergate very well.
Let me be clear about it. Nobody yet knows the truth of whether President Trump was just incompetent and surrounded by a bunch of incompetents who were doing stupid things in their discussions with Russians. We don't know if that's the case, or whether he was on the other extreme, which we also don't know, that he was consciously engaging in treasonous behavior, in colluding with Russia to cause damage to the United States for his own aggrandizement.
And other countries.
So we don't know that, and it may not. We all would hope it's not true, and we never get there. But we actually don't know.
Dr. Jeff Kassell, I bet we do know, but you're just not going to see all the stuff.
Well,
Dr. Jeff Kassell, let me ask you a question. Okay. Do you really think you can bribe Putin, who might arguably the richest man in the world? His dacha is worth well over $100 million. Nobody knows how much he's worth. One of the reasons he got to power was what we would vulgarly call the KGB. Boy, they socked away a lot of dough in Liechtenstein and our good place, Switzerland.
I think you make the point well that money wouldn't be the thing that he's looking for. But we're
it's
not
just
talking.
The influence.
I don't think money matters.
But here's the funny thing, Jim. And when Matt was on the show, the ambassador to Russia said, I just met his son and his son-in-law. They put all this stuff right out in the open. It's almost like, catch me. It's not. It's just so crazy. And then the press, it was in the press. And I remember because, that's the thing I care about, Soviet Union, Russia.
Yeah.
And we brought that up. It's almost like the Soviets and the Russians always could do so much with so little. And they just are doing a little. It's just, of course, what he does is unconscionable.
They can't even run their own country.
And Nixon tried
they have
that.
almost no economy.
They get just the oil.
That's it.
Obama.
It's oil and gas and military equipment.
With the aid of the Saudis, the other crown prince, they had Putin so bottled up. They really did. The Russian economy was virtual collapse.
Yeah, so it's the
by
same
time of
size as Italy, or
2016.
smaller than Italy, right? Which is the
2016, it was
It's-
virtually collapsed.
It's a kleptocracy. It's not run
Beyond
on.
the kleptocracy.
It's not run on any economic principles. The money is just stolen.
Yeah.
But getting back to Trump and
Let's talk about our American
getting back to Trump and
kleptocrats.
treason. If you are acting on behalf of a hostile foreign power like Russia, and you're trying to,
it's not hostile.
for example, reduce sanctions, as Trump said that he would like to do when he was questioned by that Russian that got
Right.
elected, Butina was her name or something
Yes,
like
yes.
that. And she said, what is your position on the sanctions? He said, I don't think we need the sanctions.
And NATO, which is a classic.
Well, of course,
Russian-
that's right.
Russian stance. We don't want NATO
The Russians have
expanded.
wanted to get rid of NATO for the last 30
Well,
years.
they consider it overexpanded.
And
once it
let's
gets
go
to
just in the just to,
I don't disagree
Just
with you,
going
Bob.
into your piece about the this woman who is now is
Explain
admitting
who
guilt
that-
and doing a
explain who
plea
that
deal.
is.
If you go, sorry,
Jim,
if you
explain who it is to people that don't
so
know.
this lady who was is a supportedly a Russian spy who was agreed now to cooperate with the Mueller investigation because she was here on behalf of Russia trying to influence our, like for instance, the NRA and
Influence-
other
influence
organizations.
every- yeah.
But what just when you think about when you're at a presidential press briefing. To find what I would like to sort of write large at the very beginning is this lady finds herself standing at the front of the crowd, and there are lots of reporters in that room, and Trump, picks out. He looks around and just by accident,
Oh, it was staged.
Yeah, happens to pick the Russian spy who now admits to being a Russian spy.
Well, she hasn't. That hasn't happened yet, and it's not actually clear she's a Russian spy. She might be.
Working on behalf of Russia, then.
Yeah,
Yes,
she might be
yes.
a Russian
She might be,
spy.
right.
She
The
might be
word
a
would
Russian
be an
operative.
agent of
An agent of Russia, but in
Because,
any
you know,
case,
there's all
the
sorts
point,
of-
the
yeah.
point, like you all know, if you or I were over at St Anselm's next week, and there was a political debate on, and a question and answer session was being taken, we'd have to have our credentials,
Bettina.
and then in the rabble, the great group of people there, you know, the Times of Afghanistan and the Chronicle of Santiago, Chile, all of whom would like to ask the president a question, let alone the 300 American credentialed press representatives from the United States. And just serendipitously, the president or the president-to-be happens to pick out this lady to ask him the softball
It's
question.
an incriminating admission.
Yes.
In public, and there's a record of it.
Covert
and
Russian
so
agent for the State Department.
you have Trump really sucking up to Russia, sucking up to basically what Russia wants. What does Trump really?
Well,
know?
because he needed.
What does Trump really know about NATO?
Nothing.
He doesn't know anything about
Yeah.
NATO,
Yeah.
and
Now,
he doesn't
Jim-
know anything about the sanctions. He
Right.
just knows what he's been told to say.
Well, and he's not even been told. Remember, by his own admission, and those people not his own admission, by people around him, he doesn't like to read. He doesn't read his daily briefings.
Then he's just like an
not,
American.
He's not. You know, we had his most recent foreign secretary has said that he was as dumb as whatever.
Dumb as a rock.
No, well, he said
that was
he
what
said that
Trump
he was as
said
dumb as a
about
rock. That Madison
the head
was
of Exxon,
but
you know.
Madison
Tillerson.
supposedly called him what? Some expletive.
I turned off a long time
something
ago.
moron, right? Because he doesn't read his briefings. He doesn't read. So this idea, when I listen to people talk about Trump's policy on something, he doesn't have a policy.
The big winner in this whole thing
Russia.
has been Putin.
Putin is the
he's looking
most-
like a hero. If his intention was to disrupt
big
things in
winner.
the United
Yes.
States,
And
it's worked
further-
out
and
beautifully.
further afield.
And so you've got half of not half of the country, but
stopped
a
anything
big
about
piece of the
Ukraine.
country
Yep.
supporting Donald Trump no matter what, and even a slightly
45%.
bigger piece of the country denouncing Trump.
Right.
And nothing's getting done.
Right.
The crowning achievement of the last 2 years has been this tax cut
Yeah, we don't
that
even get a
mostly
wall.
went to the wealthy and to big corporations.
Right.
It was a 40% tax cut for corporations. So instead of doctors who have a corporation in their practice, or a dentist, for example, he's going to be taxed at the 21% rate instead of being taxed at a much higher rate as an individual.
Yep. And we already had 50% of American corporations not paying income taxes.
I don't know. I don't know what the
But of
exact.
course-
I don't know what the exact number is.
Right, but you're right. This is $1.5 to $2 trillion, depending on who you read and where you read it. Being given, and most what have these corporations done with this money?
But you don't care what things cost, Jim.
Yeah, I care a lot about what things cost.
Do you? Do you really
Yes,
care?
I do, of course.
Because
don't like to go into heavy debt?
You keep saying in this town we've got to have more money in education.
Okay, we're talking
Oh
about
yeah,
Trump.
no, I do absolutely say that. We do
But,
need to spend more
we're
on
not
education.
going into
But,
that could be a debate between you two.
it's all
no,
about-
no,
He
no.
says you
I
can-
want to stay on the money.
Yes,
gonna
yes,
talk
so
about
cost,
Trump.
yeah, it's cost. So cost is all about value, right? You know, something is costly if the value you're receiving.
We're
in
not
return from it
talking.
is-
We're going
is
back to
not-
Trump.
is
Okay.
No, I'm taking it back to Trump.
Okay, good.
Okay.
So,
Trump
but
was-
I do worry
Now,
about
under-
In my opinion, Jim, the Russians did influence the election. And they went right, and WikiLeaks did too. You know, they were going into the Ecuadorian embassy,
Right.
which, and it's so amazing that Julian Assange, he didn't drop anything on the Republicans or him. It was just strictly the Hillary Clinton and crew, and it's almost like. You could see it happening, and then the people that were saying that, oh, he's a great hero, a song and all that, and you're just exaggerating. But it's almost like on demand. We need this, and he would go get it.
But I don't
Who's gonna
understand.
get it?
I don't understand the response of the Republican Party to this because I
that-
think there's a safe play for people in Congress right now.
You
right?
can't-
What's the safe place?
The safe play for the people, for senators and people.
Where's the safe place for Republicans?
I would say the safe play is to say, look, Mueller will continue with his investigation. And we fully support, the rule of law, and democracy,
he's
blah
a
blah blah.
Republican.
Right? We haven't seen anything yet that rises to the level. We get more concerned as things increase, but we think this is a witch hunt on behalf of. The Democratic Party don't like it because they lost the election. I don't believe this. I'm saying this is what I would say.
It's what they do say.
However, but the difference, what they should be saying is that if it turns out to be true, that a part or most or some of what's being claimed by these what we think are wrong Democrats, if we ever find out this is true, no one's coming after this corrupt individual and his family faster than I and the other members of the Republican leadership
Why
in
would
the
they do
Senate.
that?
No, but because you politically you can say. There's a bunch of jealous people who are making claims that are not always substantiated. It's not clear. They're trying to read things in. We don't know. Have patience. We're the grown-ups in the room. We will do the right thing. We are the Republican Party. We're the party of.
They can't say those things.
Of what?
Well, they can't say fiscal rectitude anymore. which I was gonna
Dixiecrats.
say.
No, they
Party.
can't say it because any of the Republicans that said something like that lost in the last
Yeah,
election.
they'd be lynched.
Because you're
Mia Love in
underestimating.
Utah.
You're underestimating the
reaction.
numerical reality of the Trumpinistas, the Trump supporters.
The reactionary.
No, that's a good
And
point.
that's
They-
basically 80% of the Republican Party.
They
and,
drive the narrative.
And
Right.
I hate that word.
But
Everybody
it's
uses
true.
that word.
But
narrative. I'm
it's
sick of it.
actually
Yeah, yeah.
true.
But you see,
narrative,
if
narrative strategy.
they can't tell the truth, and I mean let's face it. In life, there's a lot of people out there that prefer a lie to the truth. And this is one of the great principles that I have taken from the Trump administration. People prefer
Hitler.
Trump's lies to the
Goebbels.
truth.
Yep.
And they
Goebbels,
they
the
embrace
big lie
it.
and little
They
lies.
love it.
Yep.
They
Right.
cheer for it.
He's talking the truth. He's talking like they should.
We're gonna.
Yeah.
What are we gonna do? We're gonna build the wall.
Right. It's
And who's
easy.
gonna pay for it?
Yeah,
Mexico.
Yeah, it's all rhetorical
no,
sort of exercise. You're right. It's
Hold
simple.
on.
It's slogan.
Dr. Jeff, no slapping of the table.
Okay.
That
It's
sounds awful.
it's easy. It's jingoistic, and people love it. They
By
can
jingo.
repeat it, and you're right. And you get this. You're trying to have this nuanced argument in return, and you find yourself, floundering around. Well, no, that's not actually. And the other side, and it gets to say the simplistic thing, like whatever it might be.
you gotta know
Build the wall,
somebody-
knock her up.
Jeff,
What does that mean?
somebody calls
Yeah, it has
in-
to be 3 syllables. You're
Yes,
right.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
what
yeah.
works. It's kind of like who's that
3 syllables. Isn't that a little too
lock her
too
up,
many?
build the wall.
Yeah.
And there
Oh,
were
you
3.
mean beat.
Yeah.
Not
Who was that action star that had movies that only had 3 words?
Steven Seagal?
Yeah, Steven
Who's now a
Seagal.
Russian citizen.
Yeah.
He's now a
Along
Russian.
with Gerard Depardieu.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
But-
maybe the taxation is less. But getting back to the money, you see, America's really the loser in all this because what has happened over the last 30 years, for the most part, is money is being spent and money is being stolen from the future. We now have 22 trillion in debt, 100 trillion in unfunded liability if you go out another 30 years for Medicare and Social Security and military retirements, etc. And so your children are going to be paying this off and having this burden so that we can enjoy a little prosperity now.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
So a
gives a
small
damn?
group can enjoy some prosperity right now.
Well, the whole
it's not.
It's going to get smaller too.
Yeah. It's not like you're saying that that the population in general
Yes, they
can enjoy. Absolutely. No,
to a degree they are.
in
They get
real
cheap
terms,
TVs, cheap food. It's subsidized.
You
can go get a what is it? My last TV's like I was given a gift. Like somebody gave me a 32-inch 720. You can go for $400, like to a Walmart or someplace, and get a UHD TV and stuff. It's just the consumer culture we live in, which people are obsessed with consumer goods. And you grew up in the same era. I did.
37 million
We're all
Americans
about
are living
consumption.
in poverty. 16 million American
that
children
means there's
are going to bed
200
tonight.
million aren't.
16 million children are going to bed tonight in America
And they all
without
have a
enough
cell
food
phone.
to eat.
They have a cell
16
phone.
million. No,
and
you're
they
not
got
right.
a UHD TV.
I don't think
You're just
so.
not. You're incorrect.
I don't think the hunger.
Oh yeah,
is-
you want to come down with me to the? I'm on welfare and everything. Everybody's got a cell phone.
Yeah,
but you have subsidized consumption. You have all these ridiculous. Who needs these TVs and everything? You need constantly to upgrade your TV.
Yeah, and it's a much different
constantly.
point. But you're
And
this
all
is
these devices, but it's subsidized.
We're going into
Yeah,
the weeds
so
again.
cheap.
Yeah.
The topic
It's
is
not.
strong.
It's
The
because
topic
you're
is-
saying that the middle class people who are under intense pressures, you and I can see it. We have $15 trillion in consumer debt. We haven't had savings in over 20 years. People buy all these stuff. And think about a mortgage. It used to be you could only afford 2.5 times what you made. That was thrown out a long time ago.
I can tell you the people working in service jobs in America and where the minimum wage here in New Hampshire is $7.25, those people know nothing about trillions of dollars in debt. They don't have any debt other than payday loans that they're paying back at 1,000%.
36%, which Donna Soucy championed, the new head of the Senate.
36% is credit card debt in the state of New Hampshire, right?
Right, and-
That's credit card debt. Payday loans are in the hundreds and hundreds of percent. Right?
I thought Donna got them limited to 36%.
No, 36% would be a dream. Per annum?
I thought she did get that through-
Absolutely not.
Oh, there-
36% is what the APR is on credit cards. Back to Trump.
We're drifting from the topic.
Because it's not just businesses and everything. There are a lot of people, middle class, are living in a bubble.
I'd like to go back.
And there's a lot of anxiety.
Dr. Joe, you were
there.
saying what you talked about. You started off by saying the one accomplishment, or whatever you want to call that.
What was that?
Was the tax cut, right?
Which
It's
is
very
not,
dangerous.
I believe it's very dangerous.
The tax cut is dangerous, and on top of that, there were increases in other kinds of spending, and the Democrats tacked on their share of it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you remember, during the Obama years, there was overkill in terms of spending. Money we did not have.
It was.
Because they were so fearful of another Great Depression that they just threw everything at the wall.
That's not true.
It's $9 trillion of debt during the Obama years.
Let's just take one example here. When President Obama came into office in the middle of what was a catastrophic economic circumstance, losing millions of jobs per month, and we were heading into a second depression.
There was a risk of that.
There was, and
There was more than a risk.
And so,
the system of payments was about to collapse.
and so people. It was the thought was amongst economists that we needed an impetus. We needed call it a bailout, call it whatever you want. That the government needed to step in and where the private
That was the
market
$780 billion,
and
wasn't it?
Right.
No, it was much more than that.
So
It turned out to be much more than that.
But
There's the bailout, and then there was the like priming the pump.
That's
and you
right.
could argue about where it went.
So the point is that didn't amount to $1.5 trillion, right? So in the face of an economy that
it
was
did amount to
teetering,
$1.5 trillion.
teetering over. Well, if you're talking about total government borrowing over the period of the Obama presidency,
During 4 of the initial Obama years,
Yeah.
and the collapse was not his fault,
Yeah, right.
but he got stuck with it because he took over
Why
right
can't
in the
we
middle
blame
of
him?
Right.
the thing, and for 4 years we had shortfalls, deficits
Right.
of over $1 trillion.
Right.
4 solid years of it.
Yes.
Now we eventually climbed out of that, But I think they probably spent too much in trying to rescue the
Well,
economy.
and I would differ with you in this regard, just because I think when I want to compare the two things, not the total like the current budget deficit and how that increased over time and it was large, etc. I'm talking about simply the stimulus, right? That if you Republicans in the United States would not agree to a stimulus package in 2009 and 10. And at that time, in the face of the atrociousness that millions of people losing their jobs, industries collapsing, structural things changing within the American business and manufacturing world, and their answer was, the original thought was a $1.6 trillion stimulus package, and a battle went on in Congress. We eventually ended up with an $800 billion stimulus package.
It was TARP.
Yeah, yes, but I understand. But
There was a bailout for the auto companies.
Yes, that's part of the $800 billion. But
787 at the time of passage, revised to 831.
Right. So
over
but
10 years.
But it was battled down, right? Right. My point is that Republicans were saying
Classic
we
Keynesian.
can't do this.
My point is, who's paying for it, Jim?
Well, let's deal with that in 1 second. Just the first point I want to make
tell
is this:
them
You can't have all
is
the
that-
time.
No,
You
but
can't have all
I
the
don't want
time.
to. But I want to make the point that
You do want all the time.
We're gonna have to get the
in the
gong.
face of a not just a recession but a new depression, right? We had people who were claiming, fiscal responsibility, etc. We can't do this. We can't borrow from the future. And less than 10 years later, we have the same people telling us
they
that
throw everything,
they have no
yeah.
problem spending twice the stimulus money and giving it to the richest 0.01 or 2%.
Well, they create jobs, Jim.
Yeah, they're the
United
job
States.
creators.
They're not. Well, that's nomenclature.
They need to. They
right?
have. They have
That's
sons.
It's also
They have sons and daughters, nephews, and other people that
It
need
also
good jobs
illustrates
as
the
an investment
principle.
banker.
that the truth doesn't matter anymore.
Right.
The only thing that matters is what you believe and what you feel, and that, excuse the pun,
Right.
trumps facts. It trumps truth. So
Is this like the 1920s?
in Washington, a chief executive,
A Potemkin
a senator
village.
can spew any nonsense they want,
Yeah.
as long as it conforms with this imaginary reality that's conjured up by a political party, whether it's the party of welfare, which you
Right.
seem to like so much, or the party of warfare.
I like it too.
And that Democratic Party, they vote for plenty of war too.
Well, nobody votes for it
What it's
anymore.
doing,
They just allow it to
what
happen.
it's doing, it's impoverishing you, me, your children, and your grandchildren, because this debt is going to fall on them. Let me ask you a
Let's
question.
we can
Let me ask you.
repudiate
Let me
it.
ask you a question.
Uh-oh,
What
here
did
we
the
go.
United States pay last year in interest on the federal debts?
I thought we were talking
Just
about
give me a
Trump.
ballpark.
I think it was $500 billion.
You're right. You do know that number. It was $500 billion.
My God, I got it. Everybody take note of that, please. So that I got
and
one
it's
right.
and over the next 4 years,
Okay.
as interest rates increase, it's going to 900.
7:30. We're going to have to. We're talking about Trump.
Yeah, it's going to
We're
900.
gonna be talking
billion
about Trump.
under Trump.
Right.
900 billion,
Right.
and no one is complaining. I watched this last election. I watched all these Senate races. I watched the House races. I watched Trump's speeches as he ran around to try to promote his Republican candidates, and I didn't hear anybody talking about this.
Right.
I didn't hear anybody how we're going to deal with
Oh,
the
Mexico's
national
gonna play for
debt
the wall.
and all the other debts that are
Right.
off balance
but,
sheet.
but if you announce tomorrow, if you were a politician in the United States and you looked at, say, poverty in the United States, or you looked at, whatever it may be, or looked at education, special education funded at 17% by the federal government. Well, originally the proposal was a special education would be funded at 40%. But let's say you were a very brave politician and you got elected into this Congress, and you go into Congress, a Democratic Congress now, and you walk down from the state of New Hampshire and you say, it is not right that the federal government is only funding special education at 17%. We need to increase it by 10%.
and where's that money coming from,
But no,
Jim?
wait, no. Before we go to where it's coming from, let's say you were to say that. All of a sudden, I can tell you,
You'd
what
have
would
to
happen
relate it
is
to national
the people
defense.
who have said nothing all along because they're fine with the top 1% getting the money and borrowing for that. But if you ever said we need to put money into special education, oh my God, you'll have fiscal rectitude. We can't afford to do it. We got to do it right. So it seems to me the hypocrisy of so-called conservatives in the United States around this topic, when they sit here, and I agree with you 100% about borrowing this money from our grandchildren and great-grandchildren, it will have to be paid. But borrowing this to give it to the kleptocracy that exists in the United States today, And yet the public, the average Joe Blow on the street, whose kids are going to have to pay this, seems to be perfectly fine with it. And my friends, my Republican friends, many of whom I probably have more Republican friends than I have anything else.
Because you live in Manchester?
No, just because I just happen to know a lot of people who are Republicans and who are good friends of mine. And I took them at their word for years that the reason why we couldn't, have smaller class sizes in Manchester, or we couldn't, whatever it might be, the reason was because we can't afford it. And we're going to have to do the best we can with the money we have. We'll drive out costs. We'll try and find more efficient ways to do it. We cannot borrow money to do any of it, Jim, because it can't be done. But when it comes to their time to borrow money to give to the wealthiest 1%, they'll borrow $1.5 trillion of my kids' money.
That's their clientele.
That decision was made by basically a handful of people who really don't give a damn about the United States.
I agree. Yes,
that's a good point.
And the truth is,
I agree with you.
When you get to that level of government, it's a whole new world out there. And we are not getting the political leadership that we need in this country, and that is actually
true.
We have Donald Trump to thank for that, because no one can illustrate that better than the last 2 years under Donald Trump. The leadership, it's been leadership, as you said, by slogan, by motto.
Right.
And the real problems in this country, and I don't believe education is one of the real problems. I think
I personally
believe I personally believe we're spending too much money there. I think we're spending too much money on the educational industrial complex, the military industrial complex, the healthcare industrial complex. Right. There's too much money being spent, and this country, if it's to survive, the real danger, the national security risk in America is insolvency. And you see insolvency now happening in many countries. They're going down. Venezuela, Argentina, Greece. Italy's in terrible shape. Their banks are basically not lending any money. They don't have any money. And this game that we're playing here in the United States, borrowing trillions, that's also going on in Europe. And it's going on even worse in Japan. Japan is the model. And in Japan, debt to GDP is over 250%. It's about 105 or 110% here. But there has been no growth in Japan for the last 10 years.
More than that. That goes back to the 90s.
If zero interest rates worked, Japan would be the best economy in the world.
Right, but if you look at the distribution of income and wealth in Japan, as an example, and you compare that to the United States, if you compare life expectancy for Japan and the United States, if you compare child and infant survival rates between Japan and the United States, if you compare healthcare costs per person or per incident or per lifetime between Japan and the United States, we're way out on a limb on all of those things. So at least, even if that were true about, and not saying it's not, but because Japan has suffered for long term with even deflation, but certainly with
they did have deflation.
With no growth.
Remember,
they did,
for 10 years,
right through the 1980s.
That's what they were worried about in 2009.
But the point is, the distribution of wealth across Japan is much more equitable than it is in the United States.
That may be.
There was a survey done.
That may be. I don't really care about those things.
Well, I do, because I think it's all about equity and fairness.
When somebody starts talking about equality, liberty, freedom, when they start using buzzwords like that, I go to sleep.
Yeah, show me the money.
Yeah, I look at the money, and I know that things fail when you run out of money. And the United States has
That's true, folks.
The United States has this Ponzi scheme going on.
That's exactly true.
And Japan's got it too.
Okay, let's redo that. Now, it is a Ponzi scheme. I've said that since the 90s when I was doing all these financial articles. But the point is, it was always a thing that since the dollar, since Bretton Woods, took over from pound sterling as the currency, who could collect on the United States? But I think we're seeing, particularly like the Chinese, and Jim, you've been following this. Russia's the weak man of all this, but Putin's always like talking about an alliance with China, which probably never happened. But at the ASEAN,
they did have their first combined defense games, China and Russia, this past year.
The ASEAN conference, where Trump didn't go, and Pence was there, and he faced on the Chinese, and then Putin too, and that pissed off the guy in the White House, and you get all that stuff but the point that he wasn't there was great repercussions of that.
Like what?
Like what? People are seeing that you can go without the United States.
Well, I mean, that's
That without the dollar being because they tried to do that
this is Putin's
with
plan.
the euro, but the euro
right.
never established itself because probably what happened in 2009 as a reserve currency. Because remember Putin before he became like this pariah and when he controlled 40% of the energy into Europe, they were talking about the euro becoming an alternative currency to the dollar. But it's fine if you have a Ponzi scheme and you're like the Godfather and you control everything. What if we truly have a multipolar world or an economy?
Well, when you talk about issues like this, and you talk about the threat to
that seems to be the real
United
issue.
States being financial and etc. Yes, I can see that. I also though look at the world that was constructed post World War II.
Right.
The international political body politic organizations,
IMF,
from everything
World
from
Bank,
the UN,
GATT,
IMF, World Bank,
trade.
all of that, right? That was created with an American, not just a finger on the weighing scales, but with
head of the
with
World
American
Bank,
control.
head of the IMF.
It's worse than that, Jim.
But that is being dismantled in just as we speak.
Not
right?
really, not really.
I don't
The
judge.
U.S. dollar is still the international reserve
Yes,
currency.
it is.
No.
But you see, you almost stumbled on something that was really important about 5 minutes
So
ago.
the rest wasn't.
You almost did.
And
Enlighten
what that
me.
was is that a huge, you didn't quite, you almost said, is that all that tax cut, all the extra money that went to the wealthy, that went to corporations, that are by and large doing pretty well.
Right.
Better than the rest of us.
And they're multinational.
That money was
corporations,
borrowed, Jim.
Yes.
It was borrowed money.
For nothing.
So we
Borrowed
borrowed
zero,
money to
right?
shovel more cash at people that were already billionaires.
If I didn't say that, I thought that could be inferred. I mean, we know it was borrowed money.
Yeah, well, sometimes you gotta actually
drive it home.
make the point.
So
with,
we borrowed
with
$1.5 trillion.
with fewer words, and you don't hog all the airtime.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
We don't have the
what is the
gall.
legacy of Donald Trump?
I don't know. Stormy Daniels has to cough up $293K.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to be happening. But
I hope her book's
She
sold.
coughs up something. It won't
There'll
be
be a lot of
293K.
Okay, Jim. No.
So
Stormy Daniels served her purpose. Stormy Daniels became a wedge issue. It didn't seem to bother the family values crowd in the Republican
Which
Party.
Or the
Amazes me.
evagelicals did it.
Yeah,
you
I'm
gotta
talking
sin to
that's
be a
the
real
family
Christian.
values
Right,
crowd.
right.
Didn't bother them. They accepted that. They knew what Trump was when they got him. They made the moral sacrifice in
Right.
order
For the greater
to
good.
achieve the greater good. Exactly.
Right.
But Stormy Daniels, what everyone is forgetting about this, I'm not impressed with the campaign financing violation.
Right.
Although it's
What
real.
was really bad about it is Trump engages in very risky behavior. Stormy Daniels, Karen McDougal,
Right.
She's
building
less
Trump
risky.
towers in Moscow,
Right.
and he can later be blackmailed and extorted
Right.
by the people that know this secret.
Yes.
So that is how the compromise happened with Trump. Now,
Right.
Trump may not be working for Putin, but he sure looks like he is.
But the point is all
He's
Right.
pissed off every single ally of the United States. We're fighting with Canada, some of the nicest people in the world.
Right.
He
Well,
says
with
bad
George
things
W.
about Merkel,
Right.
the
Germans.
Prime Minister of Australia, Britain.
Yeah, the Australians at the ASEAN conference
These are
were-
allies.
Yeah.
So
Since
if
1942,
if Trump,
Australia.
if Putin was winding Trump up,
You couldn't do a better
you
job.
couldn't do a better
Right,
job
right.
because Trump's legacy is going to be to interfere with the United States' prominence and leadership in the rest of the world.
Right.
And that is actually happening.
And the damage that's done, by the way, just like
Yeah,
from
it's
the soft
tremendous.
power,
Right.
side
Yeah.
of things, the damage that's been done is already. The sad part is it's already been done, and it will take.
Look at the
it will
emerging
take
markets,
years,
yeah.
generations to undo it.
Well, I don't think it'll take generations. It's just going to take one decent leader. And
that might be right.
I'm sure.
I don't know
I'm
about
sure
that.
you have your pick already.
Well, I'm not available, but I don't.
Well, that would be interesting. You're
Are you
from
running
New
for
Hampshire.
mayor
Yeah,
this year, Dr. Jeff, next year? Are you going to run for mayor?
I think I'm getting a little long in the tooth for it. I almost ran the last time, but a friend of mine prevailed and told me it was a hopeless task.
Yeah.
Was that
my
Glenn
only
Argyle-led?
purpose in running was to keep that education budget down in the city
So he and I were going
and
head to
promoting
head.
the
We'd be going
spending
head-
cap.
I remember the debate.
Yeah, we'd go.
And
head
I'd
to
like
head.
to see a spending cap at the federal and at the state level.
Yeah.
Because there is a limit to how much money can be spent, how much people can be taxed, and how much
Yeah,
people
but we all get the
should be borrowing.
when we're
There's a limit.
borrowing all this loot, financed by slave labor, like in factories in China, we all get a chance at the sladkiages and the sweet life.
I wish the
Russians
slave
would
labor
say.
was just in the factories in China. You know,
Jim,
in
there are slave
Mexico.
labor factories
I
in LA.
think you can come a lot close. Well,
In Los Angeles, there are slave labor factories.
Yeah,
People
we've
held-
had people convicted. I don't know about in New Hampshire. We've had people convicted
LA.
in the state of Maine, right, from having
Really?
enslaved laborers
Yeah,
on
they-
farms in Maine.
Well, this is
living
factory.
in, like, closely to chicken houses,
Yeah.
right, on the farm.
That's why they
but
give the
they-
non-farm employment numbers, because that's a whole different world
Right,
out
right,
there. With
right.
In the
agriculture.
Salinas Valley 15 years ago is worse than in Steinbeck's time. The way they were
Right.
exploited. You see the shacks out there. But the point is let's go to the end game. Do you think Trump is going to, will he, and we're only going to give you a few minutes each, Dr. Kassell, will Donald Trump serve out the rest of his term?
I think there's a good chance he won't, but if I were a Democratic strategist, what I would do is I would start the trial of impeachment in the House, have it go on for at least 12 months.
Sounds like an old
Listen
English.
to the Republican defense of Trump, eventually move it over to the Senate, where it would probably fail because
Right.
the Republicans have a majority there. They'll never get 66 votes.
Yeah,
Is that
it's
what it takes?
two-thirds.
Two-thirds vote for the
67.
and then
Two-thirds plus one.
finally in the next election, whether Trump runs or not, they're gonna lose the Senate and probably lose more seats in the House, and in all probability, depending on the Democrat candidate, will take the presidency as well.
Okay, Jim, you answer. What's the immediate future of the next year, 2 years?
Well, there's the one unknown, right, is this issue about the Mueller report when it comes out. I mean, if it's
I think it's gonna be
catastrophic,
pretty damning.
if it's really damning, though, if it is about, and I'm not belittling finance reform, electoral finance reform, and all the rest of it, but if all of that is not going to drive the needle. That'll be seen as, he didn't know, he's not a conventional guy. So that's not going to matter. What would matter is if there's actually a demonstrable and believable proof.
A tape.
Yes, a tape of, that kind of thing. That
Smoking gun.
It's not just smoking, but with bullets flying out of it.
I think we've had plenty of smoking guns. You need a smoking Gatling gun.
Absent that, I think I don't see the current set of Republicans in the House and in the Senate taking any real action. And I don't see, no matter how much political sense it might make for Democrats to do as you wish, I think they'd be afraid of being placed in the bucket of just being whiners and cribbers, and so therefore
that doesn't go over.
Therefore, I think the chances are that he does last the full term.
Okay.
And lastly, and then
come on,
the
ask you a new
Democrats
question,
might
you
even
first.
be smart to have him stay there.
That's right.
Rather than have this,
They need the foil.
self-righteous, holy man coming in from the side who never did anything wrong in his life, Mr. Pence.
He's much more dangerous because he's a very bright guy.
He is.
Okay, yes, he
He
is.
hides it really well. He's a camouflage.
No, he's not. When he was in the House, he was
Never
very
says
bright.
anything.
Okay, what about the economy? Will there be recession next year, Jim? And could the recession take Trump out?
So I'm not, so if
the stock market goes,
if you look at the talking heads on advising, financial advisors like Charles Schwab and
Does
all
he
those
have
guys,
any left?
Those guys, no, but they're predicting based on the technicals.
Yes.
So this is structural issues in our market and stuff. They're saying that so there's a correction that next year will be a 10% plus, 10% minus correction next year. So they could go either way within 10 cents,
which was overdue
in the stock market, but people are coalescing on this number of a 20% reduction in the stock market.
Would that be catastrophic?
In the next, no.
It won't,
in the
because
next
it was
2 years.
overpriced to begin with.
That's right.
Right.
But not only that,
It's still
the
25,000.
stock market is not the economy. The stock
Absolutely.
market is where the more wealthy people have their money.
Well,
and when wealthy
50% of
people get a
now
tax
have
cut,
because of-
they put their money in the stock market.
GM stock was up 6% when they announced 15,000 employees are being fired. Right. So you're absolutely right.
Yeah, it's a business decision, so of course
Yeah, but
the
people
stock would be
follow the
over.
market, and over 50% of the people have like
But
401ks.
your question was about your question was about.
I don't think it's 50%.
Your
It's
question
I
was
thought it
about-
got close to it. But, you know, you could have a very small holding in a
Yeah,
401k or an IRA.
Your question
But
was about
Will,
recession.
If he can't deliver in the economy, because the one thing he's popular on, like even in the Gallup poll, is people are equating that he's this mastermind, great businessman, rather than thinking, you know, this is what happened over the last 8 years or whatever. If he really screws up the economy, I'll just say what I was taught when I was at Boston University. Was a guy from the Belgian CIA. He told us about Idi Amin, all the depravities he did, the insulting of the United States, Britain, and Israel, who had been his. As long as he could get the cocoa out,
Right. Bread on the table.
everything, he could do anything he wanted. When the cocoa could no longer come out, all of a sudden they got the Tanzanian army coming in and throwing them out. If he can't deliver on the economy, because you're saying like a 20% correction in the stock market, because it's not going to affect everybody. Because it's not what the, you know, things are so different from when I went to university and even up to like 15 years ago, because
You have an-
everything being driven by
you have an
technology.
inflated stock market. For example,
What should it be, 16,000?
Oh,
I don't know, 20?
I don't know what the number
Yeah.
should be.
it's the last 40 years of borrowed money that have ended up in the stock market.
Yeah. Well,
And the prosperity that we've had for the last 30 years in the United States is largely the result of borrowing trillions of dollars to finance prosperity by stealing it from the future. That's what's happened.
I know. And let me just
He's not a
contradict you
Keynesian.
there. I don't believe
He's
that
not a
that's-
Keynesian,
I don't believe that that's the case. You know, when you look at the accumulation of wealth in the United States, and you know, we've had real benefits from the advent of technology. And the universal availability of information, etc. There's been a transformation in business. So just like the Industrial Revolution,
oh, yeah, that's very true.
you know, caused a massive increase in wealth, real wealth, not paper money, etc. I think the transformation in technology from the 1970s and 80s through to today has had a real effect on wealth. My problem is that the way in which the wealth is distributed, that too much of the benefits of that has gone to a very small number of people.
Because the lack of progressive
over the last
taxes?
40 over the last 40 years in the United States, in real terms, the middle class has, in terms of income, but in terms of living standards, etc., has not seen improvement. So
Right, and
that's
when
but on the underlying economy and the actual creation of wealth. If you look at productivity numbers, as in productivity per hour per labor or something, it's exponential from
it's
30
not.
years ago.
Actually, productivity is not growing. If
I know, but today, over 30 years,
I
it's
look
huge.
at these numbers every day.
Okay.
If you look,
That's the
at
first I've
one
heard
number,
that.
hours worked in the United States.
Yes.
You will see that it hasn't increased much since 2007.
And-
the
and-
number of hours worked.
Okay.
Americans
Also,
were always the
middle
most
class income
productive.
hasn't increased much.
Absolutely, you're right. I agree.
And industrial production hasn't increased. It's basically flatlined with a very tiny increment.
So I agree with you with the first two. I take your word for it if you have the numbers to show that industrial output has flatlined as well. I mean, that might be partially as a result of sort of stuff being outsourced, etc. But I think the actual the hours worked, we were already working some of the longest hours in the world. In the world.
I'm looking at like the Bureau of Labor Statistics, because my knowledge went up to like 2007 when I got laid off again. You're right. It was because when I got laid off in 2007,
Right.
we were the most productive. The American workers was the most productive in the world. You're right. It's gone from
Yeah, but hang on,
My
2007, you know, the
4.3 to 0.7.
2008, 9, and
It's
10.
not increasing at all.
2008, 9, and 10, remember?
I guess what I'm saying is a lot of this prosperity is really a fantasy. And a lot of it is based on money that was borrowed. You're keeping the Ponzi scheme alive, the Social Security Ponzi scheme, the Medicaid Ponzi scheme, the Medicare Ponzi
Would you like to give
the-
up your Social Security? I
the
take
military
contributions.
pension Ponzi scheme. It's all being kept alive.
My lusty 268
I get my pension, I'm spending that money. They're
Right.
borrowing money for me to get that pension,
Right.
and for him to get his pension.
But look, when we talk about things like Social Security in the United States, the only reason it's a Ponzi scheme is because our political leadership has taken the money and spent it.
Call it what we should call it. It's corruption. It's theft.
Right. Well,
it's terrible leadership.
The only thing is if
All right, let's refocus now. You know, a thing, because listening to you talking, Jim, and you, because when I was talking about all the products we get, it's like a false prosperity, because you're right. Wages haven't gone up. People are stagnant. You're much more in debt than you ever were. You have all these baubles that are cheap, and they adopted in the Clinton administration. It's not on Clinton because it was everybody. The hedonics, you know, they rejiggered everything, the basket of goods and all that. And there's certain things that will give you more pleasure, and they always
cut. The Clinton administration still delivered a current budget.
I'm not saying,
positive.
We're not talking about Clinton and what they did.
Okay.
We're talking about the use of hedonics to underplay inflation to keep colas low, cost of living.
Right.
Because if you use the old when I up into the mid,
if the claim, John, if the claim,
no, I'm not saying it's Clinton himself.
No,
I'm
it doesn't matter.
It is a way to control inflation.
Just so you know, I'm not married to the Clintons,
I know,
the Gores,
and I'm not
the
criticizing
the
Bill
Kennedys,
Clinton.
the Bushes, any of them.
Those were the good years for me.
They don't pay me. I haven't got a single check from any of them.
They were the good years for
and
me.
even if I did, it would take more than
the point is,
it would take a very big one.
It's like a fake prosperity because people
I don't agree with that. I think that economics.
Most people are $2,000 bill in America away from like a disaster.
$2,000 bill?
They don't have the
it's nothing like $2,000 bill.
It's $2,000 will put you. Most people.
The figures that I last saw were from this year, and most people are $400. That a bill greater than $400 is more than what people can afford to pay.
Probably.
No, it's $400. It's
$400 will wipe me out.
$400.
We only got 5 minutes.
It's expensive to live in the United States, and that.
We only got 5 minutes.
My college days.
Okay, we're going to wrap it up. You can come back.
In my college days, when I was Donald Trump's classmate, I rented a room.
And he was a drinker then.
He had a glass in his hand when I met him. I don't know if there was alcohol in it. I rented a room in Philadelphia when I went to Penn. I rented a room for $30 a month. You know what that room costs now?
2,000.
How much?
No, not 2,000, but it was kind of a rundown area of West Philadelphia.
Boston. I
lived in a room for $130 a month on Beacon
Economist
Hill.
had Boston is the 7th most expensive real estate in the world,
and it's the 7th most dynamic economy in the world.
And we live in a city 50 miles exactly.
55 miles.
Yeah, that prosperity hasn't drifted northward.
No, because
because at one point we had public representatives in New Hampshire who wanted to put signs up, to tell people that they were leaving like loser Massachusetts and entering the great kingdom of New Hampshire. Don't come in.
I have a theory that, but for New Hampshire's, proximity to Massachusetts, which isn't taken advantage of, like let's say Seattle was of the Silicon Valley, and which was farther away, and then Portland, Oregon, and Seattle, and then later like Nevada where it spills over. But for the proximity of the 7th most dynamic economy in the world, the economist said that about 5 years ago, we'd be West Virginia.
Probably.
Right. Well, if you go
down, they get more money from the government. We don't get
the photograph of the lovely photograph of the city of Manchester in the backdrop behind you. If you take that if you take that kind of perspective and take it and go down to Boston right now and point your camera.
You don't even recognize Boston.
Point your camera in any direction you want, and there are high rises with cranes atop them. Yeah. There's more construction going on in one.
It's amazing.
There's more construction going on square footage in one building in downtown Boston than there is in the entire Greater Manchester area. And that's pep, huh? Well, the good news is we just saw from the Bureau of the Census Bureau that young people, we have an increase in young people migrating into the state of New Hampshire.
You know why? Because it's cheap to live here and they're broke.
It's not that cheap to live here. You're finding out.
It's a lot.
Because I'm even more broke than they are.
It's a lot cheaper than
you got a minute to sum up.
Mass is expensive.
Okay. Shut up. Right. Well, you got a minute to sum up, then you get a minute, and then we get a minute to say adios.
What would you like me to sum up?
1 minute about what Trump, the next 90 days of Trump.
The next 90 days.
Yeah. Come on, Jim. You got 45 seconds.
I don't have it wrapped up in a nice ribboned package to sort of give a single thing on Trump. I worry about the fact that there seems to be no bottom to the
bottomless. We've got it. Bottomless.
It's bottomless. We're
going to have a bottomless dancer.
The level of acceptance that people accept the behavior from Trump just seems to.
Okay, we got his minute now. Anything about? Do you think it's bottomless? The perfidy of Donald Trump.
It's not bottomless.
Is the debt bottomless?
It's a disappointment, and all you have to do is engage with Trump supporters. Start saying something negative about their
Right.
cult hero.
Yes.
And there will be a blast of hostility
Right,
coming directly toward you. You will be accused of having a
Of
mental illness,
raping a nun in the middle of Elm
derangement
Street.
syndrome.
Yeah.
And then they will start talking about Obama. He's
Right.
much better than
And-
Obama.
and
Then we'll go to
And then
Hillary
they'll go to
Clinton.
Hillary Clinton.
Yeah,
And
It was all about Hillary.
and
This is all
somehow,
about
if
Hillary
Obama
Clinton.
is bad, this makes it okay what
Right.
Trump is doing.
And the collection of clowns that he has around him seems to be okay with people, because even if he's the great guy, I don't
get
understand.
That
my-
is the
I-
legacy of Trump. The legacy of Trump
Okay.
is that nothing matters anymore.
Okay.
Yeah.
We
Every
all-
man for
now-
himself.
Now it's the minute to sum up, and it's like, but I'll just say, like we got somebody calls him Matt Carnathan show, and whatever he says, you could find it. It's on Fox and everything. That point. So it is narratives and it is driven, and they're very good at it. But that was Dr. Goebbels. It all goes back to that. The small lies, the big lies. But I don't think we've ever seen in our life people swallow the lies.
Well, we've never seen.
Yeah, we got to sign off.
We've
now.
never seen anybody lie like this.
Yeah. See you next week,
guys.
Award 13. Thank you,
It's a
Jim,
pleasure.
and thank you, Dr. Jeff.
Thank you, Dr. Jeff. It's always a pleasure.